Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Today, we're going to gamify your coding skills by turning what might seem like dry HTML rules into a seriously powerful toolkit. You know, if you've ever looked at a raw string of HTML and just wondered, how does a simple text tag suddenly transform into a bright blue link or this massive, beautiful image? Well, you're in exactly the right place. We're about to break down exactly how these hidden mechanics work to actually bring web pages to life.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with what HTML attributes actually are, then move into creating links and images, adding style and metadata, and finally, we'll cover some essential attribute best practices.
What are HTML attributes? Let's build that foundation.
To kick things off, we really need to understand what an attribute actually is in the HTML universe, because this is the absolute foundation that pretty much everything on a modern web page is built on. I want you to think of HTML tags as standard video game characters, right? And attributes, those are the essential power-ups or superpowers you equip them with inside the start tag. The cool thing is, all HTML elements can have attributes, but remember, they are always placed right there in the opening tag, never the closing tag. And they usually follow a very specific, totally logical format, a name/value pair. It looks just like this: the name of the attribute, an equal sign, and then the value enclosed in quotes. It's a really simple formula, but man, it completely dictates what an element can do.
Moving right along to part 2, creating links and images. Let's look at the navigators and the visuals. All right, let's dive into our first set of actual superpowers, the navigators and the visuals that actually get our users moving around and, well, seeing things. Because without these, the internet would just be a super boring collection of static text documents, right? Our first major tool is the href attribute. This little guy gives your standard A tag the ability to literally teleport users to specific URLs. Now, the A tag stands for anchor, but on its own, it doesn't go anywhere. By adding the attribute href equals https:/w3schools.com, you are telling the browser exactly where to send the user when they click that text. It's basically the engine that drives the entire hyperlink.
When it comes to visuals, the source attribute is your heavy lifter. It specifies exactly what image path the browser needs to go fetch and display. The MG tag itself is what we use to embed an image, but it's completely empty without source. And source, as you might guess, stands for source. When you type out source equals m_girl.jpg, you're pointing the browser directly to the exact file it needs to load up. Without this specific attribute, there simply is no image, period. Now, there's a really vital contrast to understand here when we talk about links. While absolute URLs are easy, relative URLs are actually a lot safer because they won't break if you ever change your domain. Let me explain. An absolute URL includes the full lengthy web address, like linking to an image directly on W3 School servers. But you gotta be careful here. If you don't have permission, you might be violating copyright laws, and if that external site removes the image, boom, your page breaks instantly. A relative URL, on the other hand, just links to a file hosted within your own website's structure. It drops the domain name entirely. So pro tip, it is almost always best practice to use relative URLs for your own assets.
To keep those visuals in check, you can also equip your image tags with width and height attributes, defined in exact pixels. So adding width equals 500 and height equals 600 tells the browser exactly how much space to reserve for that picture before it even finishes loading. This is an absolutely crucial step for keeping your page layout stable and looking professional while the image is downloading in the background. Nobody likes a page that jumps around as it loads. But here's a critical scenario that literally every single developer faces at some point. What happens if your user has a terrible, super slow connection? Or maybe you just make a simple typo in that src attribute. Or perhaps the user relies on a screen reader. The visual image just vanishes, and it leaves this confusing blank space. So how do we fix that?
Well, the fix is always using the alt attribute. This acts as a fail-safe text description to ensure your site remains completely accessible to everyone, including folks using screen readers. If the image cannot be displayed because of an error, let's say a typo like img_typo.jpg, the browser is going to gracefully display the alternate text, girl with a jacket, instead. It is a required attribute, and it guarantees your content is always understandable, totally regardless of any technical glitches. All right, section 3, adding style and metadata. It's time for the polish. Now that our page actually works and links together, let's step up to the next level and talk about adding some serious polish.
We're moving beyond basic structural functionality now into design and hidden page data. By utilizing the style attribute, you can directly inject personality and specific design choices right into your standard elements. Just by adding style equals color red, we've instantly transformed a standard, kind of boring line of default text into a vibrant red paragraph. It is a remarkably quick, powerful way to add styling directly to a very specific element on your page.
But hey, this isn't just about how things look to human eyes. Including the lang attribute inside your HTML tag is vital metadata that actually helps search engines properly understand your content. You should always include the lang attribute inside the main HTML tag at the very top of your document to declare the language of the entire web page. For example, lang equals EN for English, or lang equals E and US to specify English exactly as it's spoken in the United States. This helps both massive search engines and everyday browsers process your page efficiently and accurately. It's a big deal.
Finally, for this section, the title attribute offers a really neat little trick by displaying extra information as a helpful tooltip whenever a user hovers their mouse over the element. If you add title equals I'm a tooltip to a basic paragraph, and a user rests their cursor on that text for just a second, a little box will magically pop up displaying your hidden message. It's just a fantastic way to provide context to your users without cluttering up your main clean screen design.
And that brings us to Section 4, Essential Attribute Best Practices. Let's get into the unspoken rules. So let's see how all this builds into the unspoken rules of professional web development. Because, look, just because you can do something in HTML certainly doesn't mean you should. Believe it or not, HTML is incredibly forgiving. It'll actually let you get away with some pretty sloppy, unquoted, and uppercase coding. The standard technically allows you to write the title attribute as title in big, bold, capital letters, and it surprisingly doesn't even strictly demand that you put those standard quotes around your attribute values. However, if you want to code like a pro, we follow the strict W3C recommendations. Always use lowercase and always use quotes. Sticking to lowercase attribute names keeps your codebase clean, incredibly readable, and perfectly compatible with stricter document types like XHTML. Honestly, it is a fundamental, non-negotiable habit for any serious developer out there. And why is this so important? Well, if you skip the quotes and accidentally add a space in your value, the browser gets totally confused and your attribute will fail completely. Think about it. If someone writes title equals description of W3 schools without any quotes, because there are spaces in that title string, the browser won't display it correctly. It might only read the very first word. The major takeaway here, always use quotes around your attribute values to prevent these silent, annoying errors. So, how do you handle tricky situations? You use double quotes as your standard. But if your value itself contains double quotes, like say the nickname John Shotgun Nelson, you simply wrap the whole thing in single quotes instead. Or, vice versa, wrap single quotes safely inside double quotes. This just ensures the browser knows exactly where the value starts and where it ends, completely preventing any rendering errors or broken text on your final page.
All right, let's lock in everything we've learned today with a really quick recap of our newly upgraded HTML toolkit. Remember, all HTML elements can have attributes. We've got href for linking to external destinations, src for embedding vivid images, along with width and height for that precise sizing control. We learned that the alt attribute is absolutely required for accessibility and fallbacks. Plus, we can use style for injecting immediate design, laying inside the root HTML tag for defining the page language, and title for those handy little tooltips.
Now that you have these incredibly powerful HTML tools in your kit, what kind of web page are you going to build first? The foundation is entirely yours to shape. So take these superpowers, experiment with them safely in your code editor, and start building something amazing. Attributes truly are the invisible engine behind the interactive and visual web we navigate every single day. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep coding, keep experimenting, and I'll see you in the next explainer.